On Christmas Eve, my son-in-law stood up from my dining table, lifted a glass of scotch, and sent it crashing into my face. Crystal shattered. I felt something warm run down my collar as the room fell silent. My daughter didn't rush to help me. She looked straight at me and screamed, "You're being selfish, Dad." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I drove alone to the emergency room, glanced at the red stain on my sleeve, and texted my lawyer 3 words. "It's time now." By midnight, the police arrived. They were terrified. "I'm truly grateful you're here with me today. Before we go any further, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And my dear viewers, can I ask you something personal? How old are you this year? I really want to know who's walking this journey with me. Also, a quick note. This story includes some fictional elements woven in for reflection and storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real names or places is purely coincidental, but the message I'm sharing with you is very real. It was Christmas Eve, 2024, 7 o'clock. My dining room smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic, the kind of smell that makes a house feel like a home. The prime rib roast sat in the center of my oak table, surrounded by candlelight and my late wife's good china. Evelyn would have loved this. She always said Christmas wasn't about the gifts. It was about the people around your table. That's why I'd invited them. My daughter Melissa arrived first, her hand resting on her swollen belly 5 months along. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Nothing like the bright-eyed girl who used to bake cookies with her mother every December. "Hi, Dad," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Melissa." I hugged her carefully, mindful of the baby. "You look beautiful." She didn't smile. Trevor came in behind her, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Charcoal gray, tailored Italian leather shoes. For a man who claimed he couldn't afford rent, he sure knew how to dress. He extended his hand like we were closing a business deal. "Oh, Philip, Merry Christmas." I shook it. His grip was weak. "Trevor, glad you could make it." Behind him came Donald and Kathleen Dalton, Trevor's parents. Donald had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind salesmen use when they're about to upsell you. Kathleen clutched her purse like someone might steal it, scanning my foyer with the calculating gaze of an appraiser. "Philip." Donald clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. "Beautiful home, really beautiful. Must be, what, 4,000 square feet? 5,800, I said evenly. Kathleen's eyes lit up. 5 bedrooms, 6. "Well," she said, glancing at Donald, "plenty of room for family?" I didn't respond to that. Instead, I gestured toward the dining room. "Dinner's ready. Let's eat." By 7:30, the tension was thick enough to cut with a carving knife. I'd carved the roast medium rare just the way Evelyn used to make it, and served everyone generous portions. Donald ate like a man who hadn't seen food in days. Kathleen kept complimenting the silverware, the chandelier, the charming vintage wallpaper. Trevor picked at his plate, checking his phone every few minutes. Melissa sat beside him, quiet. Too quiet. I set down my fork. "Trevor, I wanted to ask, how's the job search going?" The table went silent. Trevor looked up slowly, his jaw tight. "I'm working on it. It's been 14 months, I said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. "You've been living here since January, rent-free. I was wondering if you'd had any leads." "The market's tough right now." Trevor said, his voice smooth. Too smooth. "Crypto's been volatile. I'm waiting for the right opportunity." "Crypto," I repeated. "Right," Donald jumped in. "Trevor's a smart kid, Philip. He knows what he's doing. You can't rush these things." I turned to Donald. "And you, Kathleen? You mentioned on the phone you were looking for a place to stay." Kathleen's smile faltered. "Well, we thought since you have so much room," I appreciate the thought, I interrupted gently. But I'm not looking for more housemates right now. Melissa's fork clattered against her plate. Dad, they need help. Trevor's parents have been evicted. Have they? I looked at Donald. Evicted or just between homes? Donald's face darkened. We've had some bad luck, Philip. That's all. I'm bad luck, I echoed. I took a sip of water. Trevor, I'm going to be direct. You're 33 years old. You have a wife, a baby on the way. Don't you think it's time to start contributing? I am contributing, Trevor snapped. Just because I'm not punching a clock doesn't mean I'm not working. I'm working on what? On building a future. Something you wouldn't understand because you've been retired for 3 years. You don't know what it's like out there anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I never do. I know what it's like to support a family. I did it for 40 years. Melissa slammed her hands on the table. You're being selfish, Dad. Trevor is trying. Melissa, no. Her voice cracked. You sit here in your big house with your perfect life and you judge us. Trevor lost his job because of the economy. It's not his fault. I looked at her. Really looked at her. My little girl. The one who used to sit on my lap and ask me to explain how airplanes stayed in the sky. Now she was defending a man who hadn't contributed a dime to this household in over a year. I'm not judging, I said quietly. I'm asking for accountability. Trevor stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. You know what? Maybe we should just leave. Come on, Melissa. No, Melissa said, but she stood up too. Her eyes were wet. You're right, Trevor. He doesn't care about us. He never did. Melissa, I said, standing slowly. That's not true. You never cared about me, she screamed. Not after Mom died. You buried yourself in work and you left me alone. The words hit harder than I expected, because there was some truth in them. After Evelyn passed, I didn't know how to be a father without being a husband first. I'd failed her. I knew that, but I wasn't failing her now, Melissa. I said, my voice steady. Sit down, please. Let's talk about this. Trevor put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. It's okay, babe. Let's just go. Your dad's made his position clear. Trevor, I said, looking him in the eye. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking you to step up. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned, grabbing his glass of scotch from the table, the $400 bottle I'd opened for the occasion. He raised it as if to take a drink, and then in one smooth motion he stumbled. The glass flew from his hand. I watched it arc through the air, slow motion, the amber liquid catching the candlelight. It hit the edge of the table, shattered, and a shard, sharp and fast, sliced across my forehead. Pain, immediate and bright. Warm blood trickled down my temple past my eyebrow, dripping onto my white collar. The room went silent. Melissa gasped. Oh my God, Dad. Trevor's face went pale. I didn't mean... Donald stood up. Philip, are you... I didn't move. Didn't wipe the blood away. I just stood there, letting it run down my face, staring at Trevor. I wanted them to see exactly what they'd done. Melissa started crying. Dad, I'm so sorry. Trevor took a step back, his hands shaking. It was an accident. I didn't wipe the blood away. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and I started typing. Blood dripping onto a white dress shirt has a way of clarifying your priorities. I finished typing 3 sentences, 42 words, and hit send. The phone screen glowed in my hand. Message delivered. Andrea Reeves would see it within minutes. I slipped the phone into my pocket and stood up. Melissa reached for my arm. Dad, please let me get you a towel. I pulled away gently. I need to go. Go where? Her voice cracked. You're bleeding! To the hospital, I said. Trevor stepped forward. his hands raised like he was calming a spooked horse. "Philip, I'm so sorry. It was an accident. Let me drive you." I looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive suit, the Italian shoes, the weak handshake from earlier that evening. He'd been living in my house for 14 months, rent-free, and now he wanted to drive me to the ER like some kind of concerned family member. "No," I said. Donald moved toward the door, blocking my path. "Philip, be reasonable. You shouldn't drive in your condition." "Ooh," I said quietly. Something in my tone made him step aside. I walked past him, past Kathleen, who was clutching her purse, past Trevor, whose face had gone from pale to panicked, past Melissa, who was crying into her hands. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the front door. "Dad," Melissa called after me. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I just opened the door and walked out into the cold December night. By 11:10, I was halfway to the hospital. The heater blew warm air against my face, but I barely felt it. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the dark line of blood running from my eyebrow down to my jaw. The cut had stopped bleeding mostly, but my collar was soaked through. An engineer solves problems. That's what I'd told myself for 40 years. Through product recalls, FDA audits, hostile board meetings, break the problem into parts. Identify the variables, execute the solution. This was just another problem. A son-in-law who'd been freeloading for over a year. A daughter who'd chosen him over her own father. A glass of scotch, my scotch, that had accidentally ended up embedded in my skull. Right. I pulled into the hospital parking lot at 11:28. The emergency room entrance glowed cold and fluorescent. I didn't call Melissa. Didn't text her to say where I was. She'd made her choice. Now I was making mine. The ER was quiet for Christmas Eve. I walked up to the intake desk and the nurse's eyes went straight to my forehead. "I need to see a doctor," I said. "And I need photographs for legal purposes." She blinked. "Sir, clear photographs, multiple angles, time-stamped, before any treatment." She nodded slowly and grabbed a clipboard. "Let me get you into a room." Dr. Alan Mitchell was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with steady hands, and the kind of calm demeanor you want when someone's stitching your face back together. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic that stung like fire. "You're lucky," he said, tilting my head under the exam light. "Quarter inch to the right, this would have hit your eye." "How many stitches?" "6. He threaded the needle. "You want to tell me how this happened?" "Family dinner," I said. He didn't ask more. While he worked, I pulled out my phone, checked my messages. Andrea had replied, "Saw your text. On it. We'll call you in 20 minutes. Don't go home yet." I typed back, "At hospital. Getting stitches." Dr. Mitchell tied off the last suture. "You'll have a small scar, right above the eyebrow." "That's fine." He made a note on his tablet. "I'm legally required to notify the police. This is an assault case." "Good," I said. "I want that on record." Officer Laura Daniels arrived 15 minutes later. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from me, notebook open. "Mr. Bennett, can you walk me through what happened tonight?" I told her, calmly, objectively. The dinner. The argument about money. Trevor standing up. The glass flying across the table. The blood. And where is Trevor Dalton now? At my house. With my daughter Melissa Bennett and his parents Donald and Kathleen Dalton. She wrote it down. "Are you planning to press charges?" "I want an emergency protection order," I said. "Tonight." Her pen paused. "Sir, those usually take a few days to process. My attorney is expediting it." I showed her Andrea's text. "I just need this documented, on the record." Officer Daniels studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. "I'll file the report." My phone buzzed. Andrea calling. Excuse me." I said to the officer and answered. Andrea. Philip. Her voice was clipped efficient. I talked to Judge Sterling. She's signing the EPO within the hour. It'll cover Trevor, Melissa, and Trevor's parents. They'll be barred from your property effective immediately. How soon can you have officers at my house? 1 hour, maybe less. Are you sure about this? It's Christmas Eve. I'm sure. Okay, I'll meet you there. And Philip, don't go inside alone. Wait for the police. Understood. I hung up and looked at Officer Daniels. The protection order will be ready within the hour. I'll need a police escort back to my residence. She raised an eyebrow. You work fast. I'm an engineer, I said. I don't leave problems unsolved. At 12:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a PDF attachment. The emergency protection order. Legal language that boiled down to 4 words. Stay away from Philip Bennett, Trevor Dalton, Melissa Bennett, Donald Dalton, Kathleen Dalton, all of them, banned from my property. I forwarded it to Officer Daniels, who was waiting by her patrol car in the parking lot. She read it, then radioed for backup. Mr. Bennett, she said, you understand what this means. Your daughter is 5 months pregnant. You're evicting her on Christmas Eve. I thought about Melissa screaming that I'd never cared about her. I thought about Trevor's expensive suit and empty promises. I thought about 14 months of freeloading. Yes, I said. I understand. All right then, she opened her car door. Let's go. By 1 a.m., I was heading home with 2 police cars following behind me. The streets were empty. Christmas lights blinked in windows. Somewhere families were sleeping peacefully, dreaming of opening presents in the morning. I pulled into my driveway. Every light in my house was still on. I could see shadows moving inside. They had no idea what was about to happen. When Melissa opened the front door at 1:15 a.m., her face went from confusion to shock in less than 2 seconds. She'd heard the cars. Of course, she had 2 police cruisers don't exactly roll up quietly even on Christmas Eve. But seeing me standing there bandaged and flanked by Officer Laura Daniels and 2 uniformed officers was clearly not what she'd expected. Dad, her voice was small. What? Officer Daniels stepped forward, her badge catching the porch light. Ms. Bennett, I'm Officer Daniels with the county police. We need everyone in the residence to come to the front door, please. Behind Melissa, Trevor appeared, still wearing that expensive suit. His eyes went straight to the officers, then to me. What the hell is going on? Everyone out here. Officer Daniels said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Now. Donald and Kathleen emerged from the living room, still dressed. They'd been waiting up, probably discussing their next move. Donald's fake smile vanished the moment he saw the police. Philip, he started, what's this about? Officer Daniels held up a tablet. I have an emergency protection order signed by Judge Carolyn Sterling at 12:43 a.m. Trevor Dalton, Melissa Bennett, Donald Dalton, and Kathleen Dalton are hereby ordered to vacate this premises immediately and remain at least 500 feet away from Philip Bennett and his property for a period of 12 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Trevor's face went white. This is my home. Actually, I said quietly, it's not. Your name isn't on the deed. You can't do this. Trevor stepped forward, but the second officer, a tall man with linebacker shoulders, moved between us. The officer said, step back. Melissa grabbed Trevor's arm. Trevor, don't. Then she turned to me, tears already streaming down her face. Dad, please. I'm pregnant. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at my daughter. 5 months pregnant. Dark circles under her eyes. Defending a man who'd been using her as a meal ticket. You chose him over your family, I said. You made your choice. I didn't choose. Her voice broke. I didn't choose anyone, I just wanted. You wanted me to let him freeload indefinitely, I interrupted. You wanted me to ignore 14 months of broken promises. You wanted me to pretend that glass didn't hit my face tonight. It was an accident. Was it? I held her gaze. Because from where I'm standing, it looked pretty deliberate. Officer Daniels cleared her throat. You have 30 minutes to collect personal belongings. Identification, medications, clothing only. No electronics, no valuables, nothing that doesn't directly belong to you. Trevor's jaw clenched. This is insane. Philip, you're really going to kick your pregnant daughter out on Christmas. Christmas Eve is over, I said, glancing at my watch. It's 1:18 a.m., Christmas Day. And yes, I am. Donald stepped forward, his salesman's smile replaced by something uglier. You're making a mistake, Philip. A big one. We'll sue. For emotional distress, wrongful eviction, elder abuse. I almost laughed. I'm 68, not incapacitated. Try again. Kathleen's voice was sharp. You're a heartless old man. Your wife would be ashamed. Don't, I said, my voice dropping to ice. Talk about my wife. Officer Daniels stepped between us. 30 minutes starts now. I suggest you get moving. They scattered like ants from a kicked hill. Melissa went upstairs to the east wing, the bedroom suite that had been hers since childhood, now shared with Trevor for 14 months. I heard drawers slamming, hangers scraping. Trevor darted into the living room, grabbing his phone charger from the couch, his jacket from the closet. He moved fast, frantic eyes darting like he was cataloging what he'd have to leave behind. Donald and Kathleen just stood there for a moment, stunned. Then Kathleen muttered something about ungrateful and went to collect their things from the guest room. I stayed by the door, arms crossed, watching. Officer Daniels stood beside me. You doing okay, Mr. Bennett? Fine, I said. This is hard, I know. It's necessary, I corrected. She nodded slowly. You've got a hell of a lawyer. I know. 20 minutes later, they came downstairs with mismatched luggage, duffel bags, backpacks, a rolling suitcase that squeaked. Melissa had thrown on a coat over her pajamas. Trevor carried 2 bags, his face red with anger. This isn't over, Trevor muttered as he passed me. I didn't respond. Donald shoved past Kathleen close behind. She shot me a look that would have curdled milk. Melissa was last. She stopped in front of me, tears streaming. Dad, I'm sorry. About what I said at dinner. About everything, please. Melissa, I said gently, do you love him? She blinked. What? Do you love Trevor? Or do you just need him? Her mouth opened, closed. No answer came. That's what I thought, I said. She walked past me without another word. The 4 of them stood on the driveway, luggage piled around them. No car. Trevor had sold his last year, said he'd get a new one, when crypto bounced back. Right. Officer Daniels looked at them. You need us to call you a cab. Trevor pulled out his phone. I'll handle it. You've got 15 minutes to clear the property, she said. After that, you're trespassing. Donald's voice was bitter. We don't have a car, you idiot. I stepped forward, pulled my keys from my pocket. Found the Cadillac key, my 1978 Eldorado, the one Evelyn and I had bought used in 1985. I tossed it to Trevor. He caught it surprised. Take it, I said. Drive wherever you need to go. Bring it back when you're settled. Trevor stared at the key like it was a trap. Why? Melissa asked quietly. Because, I said, I'm not a monster. I'm just done being taken advantage of. They loaded their bags into the Cadillac. Trevor got behind the wheel. Donald and Kathleen climbed into the back. Melissa took the passenger seat. Before Trevor started the engine, Melissa turned and looked at me through the window. Her expression was unreadable anger, sadness, something else I couldn't name. I didn't wave. I just watched as the taillights disappeared down the street. At 2:30, Carl Henderson showed up, a locksmith I'd called from the hospital parking lot. Big guy, gray beard, looked like he'd been woken up but didn't complain. 3 locks, he asked. Front door, back door, garage, I confirmed. He got to work. Took him 45 minutes. I paid him $480 cash and thanked him. By 2:50 I was alone. The house was silent. Too silent. I walked through the rooms, checking what they'd left behind. A coffee mug in the sink. Melissa's scarf on the coat rack. Donald's reading glasses on the side table. And in the living room on the desk by the window, a Dell laptop. Trevor's, still plugged in, still charging. The little green light blinking steadily. He'd forgotten it in the rush. Or maybe he thought it was locked securely enough that it didn't matter. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I pulled out my phone and called someone who knew how to handle digital evidence properly. Someone who could crack passwords. Someone who could find out exactly what my son-in-law had been planning all along. Victor Hayes arrived at 10 a.m. exactly when I asked. I had called him at 3 in the morning, after the locksmith left, after I spent 20 silent minutes staring at Trevor's abandoned laptop. Victor answered on the second ring, wide awake, as if 3 a.m. emergencies were routine. Maybe they were. He'd spent 20 years in the FBI before going private. He pulled up in a gray SUV carrying a duffel bag that looked straight out of a spy film. Mid-50s, graying hair, sharp eyes, the kind of man who missed nothing. "Philip," he said, shaking my hand. "You look like hell." 6 stitches, I replied, touching the bandage above my eyebrow. Courtesy of my son-in-law. His expression hardened. "The glass incident you mentioned. That's the one." He stepped inside, already scanning the room. "And you're certain he planted surveillance devices?" "I don't think it. I know it. I just don't know where." Victor set down his bag and removed a handheld device with an antenna. RF detector. It picks up wireless signals, cameras, audio bugs, trackers. If it's transmitting, I'll find it. How long? Couple of hours. Depends how thorough he was. We started in the living room. 11 minutes later, the detector began chirping near the bookshelf. The beeping intensified as Victor moved closer. He stopped at a framed photo, my wedding picture. Evelyn and me 43 years ago on the steps of St. Michael's. He lifted the frame and tilted it. There, behind the photograph embedded in the backing, was a tiny lens no larger than a pinhead. "Mini camera," Victor said quietly. "Wireless battery-powered, likely motion-activated, probably sending footage straight to a cloud server." He adjusted the frame and aimed directly at your safe. The safe sat across the room behind my desk. I'd opened it only when necessary important documents, Evelyn's jewelry. Trevor had watched every time. "Can you tell how long it's been there?" I asked. "Not yet. Once I access the cloud account, I can check metadata." He bagged the device carefully. "Let's continue." The second device was under the dining table. Victor crawled beneath it and emerged holding a black disc the size of a thick button. "Audio bug," he said. "Adhesive backing. 30-foot range. Records everything." I thought of Christmas Eve. The argument. The glass shattering. Every word captured. After another hour, he found the third device, a USB keylogger plugged into the back of my office computer. "Records every keystroke," Victor explained. "Passwords, emails, bank logins." "How long?" "Judging by the dust pattern, months." My fists clenched. Trevor and Melissa had lived here 14 months. 14 months of spying. "Can you trace where the data's going?" "Already working on it." By 1 p.m., Victor had answers. On his own laptop, he displayed lines of code. All 3 devices transmit to the same cloud server. Account registered to... He scrolled. Trevor Dalton 1991@gmail.com. He used his real email. I almost laughed. "Arrogance," Victor said. "He assumed you'd never discover it." He accessed the folders. "I can view the footage. But this technically crosses legal lines. If you want to use it in court, I'll deal with that later. I need to know what he saw." Victor hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but prepare yourself." The next afternoon, in Victor's small downtown office above a Korean restaurant, he began showing me what he'd extracted. First clip, March 15th, 2024. 3 months after Trevor moved in. The camera showed me opening the safe, entering the combination 04-17-56. Evelyn's birthday. In the doorway stood Trevor, partially hidden, watching. He recorded you multiple times, Victor said. Different dates. He knows the combination. What else? Next clip, the garage. Trevor alone moving among my 4 classic Corvettes worth over $700,000 combined. He photographed VIN numbers, interiors, keys. He was cataloging assets, Victor said. Possibly for insurance fraud. Keep going. The third file was audio. November 8th, 2024. Trevor and his father, Donald. Donald. So what's the long game? Trevor. We wait. He's 68. Actuarial tables give him 12, maybe 15 years. Donald, long time to pretend. Trevor, not if we speed it up. Donald laughed uneasily. You're not serious. Trevor. If something happens, accident, heart attack. Melissa inherits everything. And Melissa listens to me. Donald, no other heirs. Trevor, known. Once she controls the estate, we're set. A pause. Donald, you're cold. I'm proud. The recording ended. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, not with fear, but rage. How long, I asked. Victor checked the data. First upload was January 7th, 2024. 14 months. They had planned this from the day they moved in. Victor closed the laptop. This is conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum, possibly more. You could go to the police. I will, not yet. Why? I stood and reached for my coat. Trevor left his laptop behind. I want everything. You think there's more. He's too arrogant to stop at 3 devices. Victor studied me. You're building a case. Exactly. Remember, illegally obtained evidence won't stand in court. Then we'll gather it legally. At the door, he called out, Does your daughter know? I pictured Melissa's tear-streaked face when I asked if she loved Trevor. Her confusion. Her desperation. No, I said softly. She doesn't. You'll tell her, when she's ready. That night, alone in my silent study, I stared at Trevor's laptop glowing on my desk. 14 months of my life recorded, analyzed, reduced to data. They believed they were clever, untouchable. But they made one fatal mistake. They left the evidence behind. And I intended to use every single piece of it. 2 days later, Andrea walked into my study carrying a folder thick enough to bury a man. She sat across from me and dropped the folder on my desk with a heavy thud. 3 inches thick. Rubber banded. She pulled the band off slowly. I've been digging into Trevor's finances, she said. And Donald and Kathleen's backgrounds. Philip, it's worse than we thought. Show me. She opened the folder. 3 stacks of paper clipped separately. We stack 1. She slid the first toward me. Trevor Dalton, offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands. Opened April 2023, 1 month before he met Melissa. I scanned the page. Balance $127,438. Where'd he get this? Andrea slid over the second stack. Donald, offshore account in the Bahamas. 89,000. Third stack. Insurance claims. 4 separate fraud cases over 6 years. Different states. Same pattern. I picked it up, printouts from an insurance fraud database. Donald's name, Kathleen's. Aliases I didn't recognize. Trevor never traded crypto, Andrea said. I pulled his transaction history. Not a single Bitcoin, not 1 Ethereum. The whole thing was a lie. And then what was he doing? Gambling. She pulled out screenshots. Offshore poker, sports betting. He lost $340,000 in 18 months. $340,000. Gone. While living in my house. And his parents. Career criminals, she said flatly. They've been running the same scam for over a decade. Target elderly widowers, men who've lost their wives recently, have assets, are vulnerable. They get into the house through family. Live there for months. Gather information. bank accounts, safe combos, asset locations, then rob them and disappear. How many victims? 6 states. Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington. We estimate over 2 million stolen. Most victims never reported it, too embarrassed. 2 million. From men like me. But here's the smoking gun. Andrea pulled out one more document. Insurance claim filed October 2024, 2 months ago. Trevor reported stolen vintage Rolex watches, claimed they were taken from a storage unit. She slid it across. Claim number 8473929. Value $480,000. Status paid in full. $480,000, I said slowly. For watches. For watches he never owned. She showed me photos attached to the claim. My breath stopped. Not watches. Cars. My 4 vintage Corvettes photographed from every angle. VIN numbers visible. The same photos Trevor had taken, the ones Victor found on surveillance footage. He filed a claim for my cars. Andrea nodded. Reported them as his. Said they were stolen from a Tacoma storage facility. Forged rental agreements, ownership papers, insurance never verified, just paid out. When? November 12th. She showed me the bank statement, a wire transfer. $480,000. Same day, Trevor had offered to take Melissa to her ultrasound. Same day, I'd told him I was proud of him for getting serious about work. I'd said that to his face. He gambled most of it away. Andrea continued. $200,000 on poker, $50,000 on sports betting. The rest is in that Cayman account now. Does Melissa know? I don't think so. Separate accounts, offshore transfers, burner phones for gambling. She probably still thinks he's trading crypto. My phone rang. Victor. I put him on speaker. Victor, Andrea's here. Good. I found something. Donald and Kathleen Dalton aren't their real names. Andrea and I exchanged a look. Real names: Donald Eugene Crawford and Kathleen Marie Crawford. Both have active warrants in 4 states. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. Donald's got a federal warrant, wire fraud in Texas, $200,000, 2018. They've been using fake social security numbers since 2015. Federal fugitives, I said. Correct. FBI's been looking for them 6 years. Andrea leaned forward. Victor, send me everything. We need it for tomorrow's hearing. Already emailed you, but there's one more thing. The laptop. I looked at Trevor's laptop, still on my desk. Password protected. Untouched for 5 days. I can crack it, Victor said. But it'll take a day, maybe 2. And once we're in, it's evidence. We need legal clearance first. I'm filing a motion for digital seizure tonight, Andrea said. Judge Sterling will sign it tomorrow morning. Then tomorrow afternoon I'll crack it, Victor said. And we'll see what he's been planning. After Victor hung up, Andrea gathered her papers. Hearings at 9 a.m. Be there at 8:30. Bring your ER records, protection order, locksmith receipts. Everything. I will. She paused at the door. Philip, tomorrow the judge will see all of this. Offshore accounts, insurance fraud, fake IDs, FBI warrants. It's airtight. Good. One more thing. She hesitated. Your daughter. She's going to be in that courtroom. When she hears what Trevor did, the gambling, the fraud, the plan to rob you, it's going to destroy her. I thought about Melissa, 5 months pregnant, defending a man who'd been using her as a pawn. She needs to know the truth, I said quietly. I know, just be ready. She might not believe it at first. She will, I said, eventually. After Andrea left, I sat alone with the folder. $480,000. My cars. My safe combination. 14 months of surveillance. They'd thought they were clever, but they'd left evidence. Bank records, insurance claims, A laptop full of secrets. Tomorrow a judge would see it all, and the day after Victor would crack that laptop. And then we'd know exactly what Trevor Dalton had been planning all along. The courthouse smelled of old wood and burnt institutional coffee. I had stood in this building once before 40 years ago to file my business incorporation papers when the floors were polished and didn't creak with every step. Now at 8:30 on a bitter December morning, I sat on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom 3B, waiting to hear my name. Andrea sat beside me reviewing her notes for the last time. Her briefcase bulged with documents, medical records, bank statements, surveillance footage, insurance claims, everything we needed. "You ready?" she asked quietly. I touched the bandage above my eyebrow. 6 days old. The stitches would come out next week. The scar would not. "I'm ready." At 9 sharp, the bailiff opened the doors. Bennett versus Dalton. Protection order hearing. We stood and walked inside. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. 20 benches, fluorescent lights humming overhead, an American flag standing rigid in the corner. Judge Carolyn Sterling sat at the bench, late 50s. Gray hair pulled tight, glasses low on her nose. She looked like someone who had little patience for nonsense. Across the aisle sat Trevor and Melissa. Trevor wore a navy suit that didn't quite fit the fabric, cheap and stiff. His face was pale, jaw clenched. Melissa sat beside him in a maternity dress, hands folded protectively over her swollen belly. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked exhausted. Behind them, 2 empty seats. Donald and Kathleen had stayed away, smart enough not to show. Trevor's attorney, Rachel Winters, court-appointed mid-30s, blonde, carrying a thin folder, looked overwhelmed. Judge Sterling glanced up. Mr. Bennett approached with counsel. Andrea and I stepped forward. Trevor and Rachel took their place opposite us. "This is a hearing regarding Emergency Protection Order number 74,921, Judge Sterling began. Filed December 24, 2024, by Philip Bennett against Trevor Dalton, Melissa Bennett, Donald Dalton, and Kathleen Dalton. The order was granted on an emergency basis and expires today unless extended. Ms. Reeves." "Yes, Your Honor." "Ms. Winters." "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Sterling fixed Trevor with a steady look. "Mr. Dalton, you understand these proceedings?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Sit." She turned to Rachel. "Your client is accused of assault. Does he wish to speak?" Rachel stood. "Your Honor, my client denies intentional harm. What occurred on Christmas Eve was an accident. Additionally, Mr. Bennett's decision to evict a pregnant woman without notice could constitute elder abuse and financial coercion." I kept my face still. "Elder abuse." Judge Sterling's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Mr. Bennett is the plaintiff." Rachel pressed on. "My clients had lived in Mr. Bennett's home for 14 months. They had no alternative housing. Evicting them on Christmas Eve knowing Melissa is 5 months pregnant was reckless." "Ms. Reeves," the judge asked. Andrea stood calm and precise. "Your Honor, I submit emergency room records from December 24th. Mr. Bennett sustained a laceration requiring 6 stitches. The attending physician, Dr. Alan Mitchell, documented blunt force trauma consistent with a thrown glass. The bailiff delivered the papers to the bench. I also submit photographic evidence." Andrea held up an 8x10 image me in the ER, blood running down my face, shirt soaked red. Taken at 11:47 p.m. Another photo followed shards of broken Scotch glass scattered across hardwood. Taken by police at 1:30 a.m. Rachel stood. "The glass broke, yes, but it was accidental." My client stumbled. "I have video evidence," Andrea said. The room fell silent. Judge Sterling looked up sharply. "Dito?" "Yes, Your Honor. From Mr. Bennett's home security system." Trevor's face drained of color. "Your Honor," Rachel protested, flipping through her thin folder. "I wasn't informed." "It was included in discovery 3 days ago," Andrea replied coolly. "Page 47. Rachel's hands trembled as she searched. "Play it," Judge Sterling said. Andrea connected her laptop to the courtroom projector. The screen flickered alive. The clip lasted 30 seconds. The camera showed my dining table on Christmas Eve. I sat at the head. Trevor stood holding a glass of scotch. There was no sound. Trevor raised the glass not to drink, but as if in mock toast. Then his arm moved. The glass sailed across the table. Amber liquid arced through the air. I did not move. The glass struck my forehead. On screen, I recoiled, hand to my face. Blood seeped between my fingers. Trevor stepped back, palms lifted in feigned innocence. The video ended. Silence pressed against the walls. Melissa wept quietly. Trevor stared at the screen, lips parted. I didn't mean. It was deliberate, Judge Sterling said calmly. Mr. Dalton, stand. He rose, shaking. How long did you reside in Mr. Bennett's home? 14 months. Did you pay rent? No. Contribute to utilities, groceries? No. Were you employed during that time? I was developing a crypto trading business. That's not what I asked. Did you have a job? No. The judge made a note. Ms. Reeves, you mentioned additional evidence. Yes, Your Honor. After the protection order was issued, Melissa Bennett posted a video online defaming Mr. Bennett. It has over 50,000 views. In the comments, users published his home address and phone number. Within 24 hours, his mailbox was vandalized with the words, "Child abuser." Screenshots were handed over Melissa's video, the comments revealing my address, photos of the graffiti. Additionally, Andrea continued, Mr. Bennett received multiple threatening calls traceable to the viral spread of that video. Judge Sterling turned to Melissa. Did you post the video? Yes. Were you aware people were posting your father's address? I didn't check the comments. Did you remove the video? No. Judge Sterling set down her pen. I have heard enough. The air in the courtroom tightened. The emergency protection order is extended for 12 months effective immediately. Trevor Dalton, Melissa Bennett, Donald Dalton, and Kathleen Dalton are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Philip Bennett or his residence. Trevor swayed. Rachel caught his arm. Mr. Dalton, you are ordered to complete an anger management program within 90 days. Failure to comply will result in immediate arrest. She paused. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. Assault with a deadly weapon, yes, Ms. Winters, a glass qualifies, is serious. Rachel said nothing. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Bennett, document any violations. Contact law enforcement immediately if necessary. Yes, Your Honor. All rise. We stood. Across the aisle, Melissa looked at me. Dad, she whispered. I did not respond. I walked out. Cold air met us on the courthouse steps. Andrea touched my arm. That went well. The video sealed it. Good. She hesitated. There's something else. My stomach tightened. What? Victor called while we were inside. He accessed the laptop. I stopped. And he said you need to see what's on it. Immediately. He's waiting at your house. Through the courthouse glass doors, I saw Melissa and Trevor emerge. She was crying openly now. Trevor was already on his phone, speaking urgently. They looked shaken but unaware. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Let's go, I said. 2 days after the hearing, Victor returned to my house with Trevor's laptop and a grim expression on his face. He'd cracked the password that first afternoon, right after I'd left the courthouse on December 30th. But what he'd found inside had taken him another 36 hours to fully analyze. Now, on the afternoon of January 1st, he sat across from me in my study and opened the laptop with the careful movements of someone handling evidence at a crime scene. You're not going to like this, he said. Show me. The desktop background was generic. Some stock photo of mountains. No family pictures, no personal touches. Victor pointed to a folder in the corner labeled Crypto Trading. That folder's completely empty, he said. Not one transaction record, not one wallet, nothing. Your son-in-law never traded crypto in his life. He opened another folder. Personal. 147 files. This is where everything is. Victor clicked through the browser history. Page after page of gambling websites, offshore poker rooms, sports betting platforms, casinos I'd never heard of hosted in countries that didn't ask questions. 90% of his activity for 18 months, Victor said. He was gambling and losing. Based on email confirmations, I estimate $340,000 gone. I watched the screen scroll. Bet after bet after bet. All while he'd been living under my roof pretending to work. The emails are worse, Victor said quietly. He opened Trevor's Gmail and clicked on a message from September. From Donald, the subject line read, Phase 2 Update. I read the body, Phase 2 complete. The old man trusts us now. He even invited Kathleen and me for Thanksgiving. Move to Phase 3 when the girl hits 4 months. We need her pregnant and dependent before we escalate. My hands gripped the armrests of my chair. Victor opened the next email. November from an insurance company. Subject, claim approval. The body was short and businesslike. Your claim for stolen property has been approved. Payment of $480,000 will be transferred within 3 to 5 business days. Your Corvettes, Victor said, that he reported stolen. $480,000, paid directly to his Cayman account. The third email was dated December 18th, 1 week before Christmas, from Donald again. Subject line, contingency plans. I read it aloud. If the old man kicks us out, we sue for emotional distress and grandparent rights. Melissa's pregnancy gives us leverage. If he keeps us in the house, we wait. Either way, we win. Stay calm, don't get sloppy. Victor closed the email. They had a plan for every scenario. Get kicked out, sue. Stay, wait for you to die, and let Melissa inherit. What else? He opened a spreadsheet file. This is called Bennett Financial Plan. First sheets and asset inventory. I leaned forward and read. My house $5.8 million estimated. Corvette collection $750,000. Investment portfolio $2.1 million. Pension, life insurance, everything. Down to the dollar. Like I was merchandise in a catalog. Second sheet, Victor said, scrolling. Timeline. It was laid out like a battle plan. December 25th, create family conflict public incident preferred. January 15th, file lawsuit for grandparent visitation rights. February 1st, Melissa files elder abuse complaint. March 1st, if lawsuit fails, Melissa divorces and claims community property. April 1st, baby-born custody battle begins. Every step, every contingency. 14 months of planning. Does Melissa know? I asked. Victor pulled up a folder of screenshots. Text messages between Melissa and her friends. I saw her name, saw timestamps, saw conversations. My dad is being so stubborn, one message read. Trevor says he'll come around eventually. I just wish they'd get along. Another, Trevor's working so hard on his crypto business. I know it'll pay off. Dad just doesn't understand the market. Another, I hate being in the middle. I love them both. Why can't they just be a family? Victor closed the folder. She has no idea. He's been feeding her a completely different story. She thinks he's trying. She thinks you're the problem. My daughter, 30 years old, pregnant with his child, defending him, believing every lie. There's one more document, Victor said. His voice was different now, careful. And Philip, this one's the worst. He opened a Word file. Phase 4.doc. I read it. The title at the top said Exit Strategy, with a timeline of April 2025. Post-birth. The plan was simple. Trevor and Donald would disappear after the baby was born. Take the remaining money from the insurance payout, around $200,000, and leave no forwarding address. Melissa, exhausted and vulnerable, would return to me. They predicted I'd take her in out of guilt and desire to see my grandchild. Then they'd wait 6 months. Kathleen would resurface as a concerned grandmother and file for custody. The document listed her arguments: Melissa's mental instability, my age, being too old to care for an infant, unsafe living environment based on the Christmas eviction. If custody was granted, they'd get $2,000 a month in child support from me, plus eventual access to inheritance through the grandchild. If custody was denied, they'd threaten to take the child out of state and negotiate a settlement. I stared at the screen, at the words, at the cold calculation of it all. My daughter wasn't his wife. She was his mark, a tool to access my money. And after she gave birth, after she'd served her purpose, he was going to abandon her and steal our grandchild. Philip, Victor said carefully. What do you want to do? I closed the laptop. Can you make copies? Everything. Stay already done. 3 drives. 1 for you, 1 for Andrea, 1 for police. Call Andrea. We meet tomorrow morning. What are you thinking? I stood and walked to the window. Outside, January sun was setting over snow-covered lawns. Cold. Quiet. I'm thinking my daughter needs to know the truth, I said. Before it's too late, Victor packed up the laptop. If you show her phase 4, the plan to abandon her, it'll destroy her. She might not believe you. She's 5 months pregnant and emotionally invested. I know. I turned from the window. But she deserves to know, before he takes everything from her. After Victor left, I sat alone in the silence. Melissa was out there in some motel room thinking I was the villain. She had no idea Trevor had planned this from the first date. The proposal, the wedding, moving into my house, getting her pregnant. All calculated, all premeditated, and in 3 months he was going to leave her, unless I stopped him first. 3 days had passed since Victor showed me what was on Trevor's laptop. 3 days of sitting in my study staring at spreadsheets and documents outlining a future so cold it barely felt human. Phase 4, abandon Melissa. Take the baby. Disappear. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. She still believed Trevor loved her. If I showed her the plan now, she'd think I forged it. So instead, I watched. I waited. I gathered proof. On the evening of January 4th, I got into my Cadillac and drove to the address Melissa had revealed in her viral video, the motel she'd filmed from, while calling me heartless. It sat just off the highway 20 minutes from my house. I pulled in at 6 o'clock. The sky was already dark. The streetlights flickered weakly against the cold. The neon sign above the office buzzed OTEL. The M had burned out long ago. I parked in the far corner of the lot, about 50 feet from room 237. Far enough not to be noticed. Close enough to see everything. The 2-story building had once been painted a cheerful yellow. Now the paint peeled in long strips, exposing gray concrete. Rust bled through the metal railings. Someone's jeans and a towel hung over the second-floor railing, dripping onto the cracked pavement below. A plastic rate board near the office read $89 per night, $623 per week in advance. They'd been here since Christmas Eve. 11 days. Nearly $1,000 already. Trevor didn't have that kind of money anymore, not after gambling away the insurance payout. I wondered who was paying. Donald, perhaps. Or one of those offshore accounts Victor uncovered. At 6:15, the door to room 237 opened. Melissa stepped out. She wore an oversized gray hoodie that fell past her hips, but it couldn't conceal her belly. 5 months pregnant. Maybe closer to 6. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. No makeup. Dark circles under her eyes even from this distance. She moved slowly toward the vending machines near the office, one hand pressed to her lower back, the other brushing the railing for balance. She looked beyond tired. Hollow. My daughter. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The door behind her flew open again. Trevor, where are you going? His voice carried across the lot. Melissa turned. Just getting water. I'm thirsty. Then ask me, I'll get it. Trevor, it's 20 feet. He crossed the distance in seconds and grabbed her arm. not violently but firmly enough that she lost balance and stumbled. "Get inside! You're overreacting. Get inside." He pulled her back toward the room. She didn't fight. She simply let him guide her through the doorway. The door slammed shut. My hand was already on my car door handle. Every instinct in me screamed to walk over there, to knock, to take her home. But Andrea's voice echoed in my mind. "You need evidence, not anger. If you confront him now, you lose leverage." I forced my fingers to release the handle. Forced myself to breathe. Not yet. At 7, Donald stepped outside and lit a cigarette. He leaned against the railing, smoke curling into the cold air. A moment later, Kathleen joined him, wrapping a cheap puffy jacket tighter around herself. "This was your plan," she hissed. "Now we're stuck in this dump." "Lower your voice," Donald muttered. "Don't tell me to lower my voice. We were supposed to be living in that house, comfortable, waiting for the old man to die. Instead, we're in a roach motel, eating takeout." "He'll cave," Donald said calmly. "Old men always do, especially when their grandchild's born. He'll let Melissa back in, and then we." The girl is clueless. She still thinks Trevor loves her. She has no idea. "That's the advantage," Donald replied. "She's our cover. When we sue for custody, she'll stand with us because she doesn't know better." "Custody." My stomach tightened. Kathleen shook her head. "We should have pushed harder at the hearing." "It was a setback," Donald said. "Not the end." His phone buzzed. He answered, pacing a few steps away, but I still caught fragments. "Judge slowed us down. Kids due in April. That's leverage. Grandparent rights. Custody battle. $2,000 a month, easy." He laughed. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. At 7:30, the lights in room 237 went out. Through thin curtains, shadows shifted. I could hear muffled voices. Trevor's voice, sharp, impatient. Melissa's softer, pleading, then crying. I sat in the darkness of my car and listened to my daughter cry through that flimsy motel window. Every fiber of my being wanted to break down that door. At 7:45, I started the engine and drove home. The entire drive back, I replayed what I'd seen. Melissa exhausted and isolated. Trevor controlling every movement. Donald and Kathleen treating this like strategy, not family. She believed I had abandoned her. Believed I was the villain who threw her out on Christmas Eve. She didn't know I was the only one trying to protect her. But if I told her now, she would defend him. She would say I was exaggerating, that I hated Trevor, that I wanted control. No, she had to see it herself. I needed proof so undeniable she couldn't dismiss it. Proof stronger than emotion, stronger than loyalty. I didn't know yet how I would show her, but I knew time was running out. In 3 months, that baby would be born, and Trevor's phase 4 would begin. For 2 days, I sat in my study reading and rereading the contents of Trevor's laptop. Victor had copied everything onto a USB drive, but one file pulled me back again and again. The one that laid out the entire operation in cold, methodical detail. Bennett Asset Acquisition.docx, 67 pages. On the morning of January 5th, I opened it again and forced myself to read every word. The document began with a stark title page. No author. Just the file name and a date, March 15th, 2023. 2 months before Trevor had even met my daughter. Page 1 target profile. Philip Michael Bennett. Age 68. Widowed. Spouse Evelyn Bennett, deceased October 2021. Net worth estimated at $8.6 million. Primary residence valued at $5.8 million. Vintage automobile collection $750,000. Investment portfolio $2.1 million. Pension income $85,000 annually. Life insurance policy $500,000. They had cataloged everything, down to the dollar. Like I was livestock being priced. The next section was worse. Psychological profile. Subject exhibits classic markers of vulnerable elderly widower. Socially isolated following spouse's death. No close friends or extended family. Primary emotional connection, is estranged daughter Melissa Ann Bennett, age 28. Subject demonstrates strong desire for reconciliation and fear of dying alone. Recommended approach: establish romantic relationship with daughter, present as stable and caring partner, facilitate reconciliation between subject and daughter. I set the document down. My coffee had gone cold. They hadn't just studied my finances. They had studied my grief. 3 years of coming home to silence. 3 years of missing Evelyn. 3 years of wanting my daughter back and not knowing how to fix what broke between us after her mother died. They saw vulnerability and built a business plan around it. Pages 16 through 30 were labeled Phase 1 Infiltration. The timeline read like a military operation. April 2023. Initial contact via dating application. Daughter matched with operative Trevor. First date April 12th. Relationship accelerated using standard bonding techniques. August 2023. Engagement after 4 months. August 24th. Operative introduced to Philip Bennett. Presented as financially stable crypto trader. Demonstrated respect and deference. December 2023 marriage ceremony. Reception funded by subject $14,000. Trust baseline established. January 2024. Move in under pretense of saving for down payment. Surveillance equipment installed within 48 hours. Monitoring initiated immediately. January 7th. I remembered that day. Boxes stacked in the East Wing. Me carrying a dresser upstairs, joking about finally having family in the house again. And while I was laughing, he was installing cameras. Pages 31 through 45, Phase 2, Dependency. February 2024. Operative quits employment. Cover story downsizing. Subject offers continued housing support. March 2024. Donald and Kathleen introduced under eviction emergency narrative. Subject invites temporary stay. Extended surveillance network established. April through December 2024. Financial dependency deepened. Operative makes no effort to secure employment. Subject funds all household expenses. Daughter conditioned to defend operative. Emotional wedge between subject and daughter widened systematically. Every conversation about job hunting. Every grocery bill for 5 instead of 1. Every argument where Melissa defended him. Scripted, engineered. Phase 3 began on page 46. Pregnancy timeline critical element. Subject's daughter must conceive no later than December 2024. Pregnancy provides emotional leverage through subject's desire for grandchild. Legal leverage via visitation rights and custody claims. Dependency amplified as pregnant daughter less likely to leave operative. Insurance against premature discovery. Target conception window, July to August 2024. Confirmed pregnancy September 2024. Due date April 2025. They had planned my grandchild. Timed it. Scheduled it. The contingency section made my stomach turn. Scenario A, subject evicts operative. Response file claims for emotional distress. Elder abuse, grandparent visitation rights. Leverage pregnancy for public sympathy. Damage subject's reputation. Settlement likely. Scenario B, subject allows continued residence. Response maintains surveillance, await natural death. Actuarial tables estimate 12 to 15 years. Daughter inherits estate. Operative controls daughter, thus controls inheritance. I felt physically ill. Then came Phase 4 exit strategy post-birth. April 2025. Child born. Operative and Donald disappear with remaining funds estimated $200,000 from insurance payout. No forwarding address. Daughter exhausted and abandoned returns to subject with newborn. Probability 95%. October 2025. Kathleen resurfaces as concerned grandmother. Files custody claim, citing daughter's instability subject's advanced age unsafe environment. Goal secure custody. Establish $2,000 monthly child support from subject plus long-term inheritance access via grandchild. They were going to abandon Melissa, take her baby, and use my grandchild as leverage against me for the rest of my life. The appendix listed 6 previous targets: elderly widowers across Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon. Dates spanning 2012 to 2023. Total funds acquired $2.1 million. This wasn't improvisation. It was a business model. At the bottom of the final page was a paragraph labeled Contingency Protocol if operation discovered prematurely. Operative denies knowledge. Claims daughter Melissa was primary planner. Subject more likely to believe daughter manipulated operative. Melissa has no knowledge of operational details and cannot refute accusations. If necessary, sacrifice daughter's credibility to protect operative. I read that section 3 times. If exposed, they would blame Melissa, paint her as the architect, destroy her reputation to save themselves, and she had no idea. None. I closed the laptop slowly. Evelyn's voice drifted through memory. Something she used to say when I brought home a contract that looked too good to be true. Trust but verify, Philip. Always verify. I had trusted. I had not verified. Now my daughter was pregnant with a con man's child, living in a decaying motel, convinced I was the villain. They thought they had calculated every variable. They hadn't calculated one thing. I'm an engineer, and engineers don't panic. We analyze. We adapt. We solve problems. The question was never whether to tell Melissa. It was how to make her believe me. On the morning of January 8th, I sat in my study staring at my phone. Victor's USB drive rested on my desk, 67 pages of Trevor's operation plan, offshore bank statements, fraudulent insurance claims, surveillance footage. Enough evidence to destroy him. None of it mattered if my daughter refused to listen. At 8 o'clock, I called Andrea. I need to talk to Melissa, I said. Alone. There was a pause. Philip, the protection order prohibits contact. If Trevor reports you, you could be arrested. What if she contacts me first? Another pause. Longer. If she initiates contact, then it's legal. But how do you plan to get her to reach out? That was the problem. I couldn't call her. Trevor controlled her phone. I'd seen him snatch it from her hand at the motel. I couldn't go to the motel without violating the order. Social media was out of the question. He likely monitored her accounts. There had to be another way. At 10, something clicked. Before Trevor, Melissa had an old Gmail account she used in high school and college. melissa.bennett.1994@gmail.com. I'd sent birthday messages there for years before she switched to a newer address. Trevor wouldn't know about it. It existed before he did. I opened my laptop and drafted a short message. Subject: From Dad Body, Melissa. I know you think I abandoned you. I didn't. I need to show you something about Trevor that you deserve to see. If you want the truth, reply to this email. I'll meet you anywhere, anytime. But you must come alone. Dad. I reread it 3 times, removing anything that sounded angry or defensive. No accusations, just an invitation. I pressed send at 10:30. Then I waited. By noon, nothing. By 3, still nothing. By 6, I began to doubt she'd ever check that account again. Maybe she deleted it years ago. Maybe Trevor somehow found it. At 6:15, I called Victor. Can you access Melissa's old social media? I asked. She hasn't posted since December 2023, he said. Account looks dormant. Can you send her a private message without Trevor knowing? It's risky, Victor said. But yes. I can route it through a burner account. Make it look casual. Tell her to check her old Gmail. That I sent something important. Philip, if Trevor discovers this. He won't, I said. Just do it. 20 minutes later, Victor texted, message sent. I went to bed, not knowing if any of it had worked. At 7 the next morning, I checked my email. One new message. From melissa.bennett.1994@gmail.com. Sent at 2:34 a.m. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dad, I don't know if I can trust you. Trevor says you're trying to take my baby, but I need to know the truth. Wednesday, 2 p.m. coffee shop on Highway 7, 30 miles south. I'll be alone. Don't bring lawyers. I read it twice before replying. I'll be there. Just you and me. Then I called Andrea. She agreed to meet. Philip, this is dangerous, she warned. If Trevor finds out, he'll claim you violated the protection order. He'll say you're harassing her. He won't know, I said. The shop is 30 miles away. He doesn't know about her old email. And if she tells him, she won't. She sent that message at 2:30 in the morning. She's hiding this. Andrea exhaled. When you meet her, don't overwhelm her. Show the evidence, but don't push. If she's not ready, I understand. After hanging up, I began preparing. I printed the most critical pages from Trevor's laptop, 20 pages total. The target profile listing my name and assets. The Phase 1 timeline, detailing how he orchestrated the relationship from the first date. The Phase 4 exit strategy, planning to abandon her and take the baby. The contingency protocol outlining how they'd blame her if exposed. I copied everything onto 3 USB drives. One for me, one for Melissa, one backup. I printed screenshots, Trevor installing the camera, Donald and Kathleen discussing strategy, the audio transcript where Donald laughed about my death triggering Melissa's inheritance. I added bank records showing offshore accounts, documentation of Donald's fraud history, the insurance claim where Trevor reported my Corvettes stolen and collected $480,000. By 10, I had a thick folder proof that couldn't be dismissed as paranoia. But evidence alone didn't guarantee belief. I stood before the mirror in my study and practiced what I would say. Melissa, I'm not here to take you home. I'm here to show you who Trevor really is. I know you love him. I know you believe he loves you. But please look at this with an open mind. Your husband planned to leave you before you were even pregnant. He planned to take your baby, to use our grandchild as leverage against me. You were never his partner. You were his target. I repeated it again and again, adjusting my tone. Calm, steady. No anger, just truth. At noon, I wrote a letter as a safeguard, in case the meeting collapsed. In case she walked away before seeing everything. In case Trevor intercepted her again. The letter said what might be impossible to say aloud. How deeply I loved her. How sorry I was for the distance between us after her mother died. How I failed her in ways I still regretted. But also how Trevor had studied us, manipulated her, timed her pregnancy, planned to abandon her and take her child. I sealed it in an envelope and placed it in the evidence folder. Then I sat back. 2 days. In 2 days, my daughter would either see the truth or lose me forever. But at least I would know I tried. At least she would know I hadn't abandoned her. At least she would know her father fought for her to the very end. The coffee shop was 30 miles from the motel, tucked between a hardware store and a laundromat. The kind of place where nobody paid attention to anyone else. I arrived at 1:45, 15 minutes early. Parked my Cadillac around back where it wouldn't be visible from the road. Inside the shop was nearly empty. A teenager behind the counter scrolling through her phone. An old man in the corner reading a newspaper. No one who'd remember my face. I ordered black coffee and sat in the back booth, the folder of evidence on the seat beside me hidden under my jacket. Then I waited. At 2:15, the door opened. Melissa stepped inside. She looked worse than she had at the motel. Face pale, eyes swollen like she'd been crying for days. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweatshirt that couldn't quite hide her belly. 5.5 months now. Maybe more. She glanced around the shop carefully before walking over. Slid into the booth across from me, hands folded on the table. I have 30 minutes, she said quietly. Trevor thinks I'm at a prenatal checkup. I nodded. Thank you for coming. She didn't say anything. Just looked at me with those red, exhausted eyes. My daughter. My little girl. Looking at me like I was a stranger. I'm not here to apologize, I said. I'm here to show you something. I pulled out the laptop and turned it toward her. Opened the file. Bennett Asset Acquisition.docs. Watched her face as she read the first page. Target profile. Philip Michael Bennett. Net worth $8.6 million. Psychological profile, lonely, vulnerable desire for family reconciliation. Her face went white. "This has to be fake," she whispered. "It's from Trevor's laptop," I said. "The one he left behind." "That you broke into his—" "He left it in my house," I interrupted. "When you were evicted. It's been sitting on my desk for 2 weeks." She stared at the screen. I clicked to the next page. Phase 1 Infiltration. April 2023 Initial contact via dating application. The timeline of their entire relationship laid out like a business plan. "He didn't meet you by accident," I said quietly. "He targeted you because you were my daughter." Her hands started shaking. I clicked to the emails. The one from Donald. Phase 2 complete. The old man trusts us now. Move to Phase 3 when the girl hits 4 months. We need her pregnant and dependent before we escalate. Melissa read it, then read it again. Her lips moved silently, forming the words. "The baby," she whispered. "They planned this." I nodded. She covered her mouth with her hand. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought he loved me," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought we were building a life together. I thought—" "They're using you to get to me," I said. "And when they're done, they're going to leave you with nothing." I clicked to Phase 4. The exit strategy. Showed her the part where Trevor and Donald would disappear after the baby was born. Showed her the custody plan. Showed her the contingency protocol where they'd blame her if they got caught. She read every word, silent tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked up at me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Her voice was small, broken. "Would you have believed me?" I asked. "On Christmas Eve, when Trevor threw that glass. If I'd told you then that he was using you, would you have listened?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "Oh, no," she whispered. "I would have thought you were lying. I would have defended him." "I know," I said. "That's why I waited. I needed proof. I needed evidence you couldn't deny." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do I do now?" "I need your help," I said. "We can stop them, but only if you're willing to act." "What do you want me to do?" I leaned forward. "Go back to the motel. Act normal. Pretend nothing's changed, but record everything. Every conversation with Trevor. Every conversation with Donald and Kathleen. Anything they say when they think you're not listening." "How?" I pulled out the burner phone, small cheap pay-as-you-go, slid it across the table. "Keep this hidden," I said. "In your purse, in your pocket, wherever Trevor won't find it. Text me every night at 10 p.m. Just one word safe. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling the police." She picked up the phone, turned it over in her hands. "What if Trevor finds it?" she asked. "Well, then you leave immediately and call 911. But Melissa, I need you to be strong. Just for a few days. Can you do that?" She looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in months, I saw my daughter behind those tired eyes. "He's going to leave me," she said quietly. "After the baby's born. He's going to take everything and leave me." "Not if we stop him first," I said. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do it." "One more thing," I said. "Don't tell anyone about this meeting. Not your friends. Not anyone. Trevor can't know we talked. If he finds out, he'll use it against you," she finished. "I know." We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop felt too quiet, too empty. Like the whole world had narrowed down to just this booth, just this conversation. "Dad," she said finally. Her voice broke on the word. "I'm sorry. For everything. For believing him. For that video. For saying those things about you." "Melissa," I said gently. "You were manipulated. That's not your fault. But I chose him over you," she said. "On Christmas." When you tried to warn me, I chose him. You chose what you thought was right, I said. You were trying to protect your family. That's not wrong. That's what you're supposed to do. She wiped her eyes again. I don't know if I can do this. Pretend everything's okay. Go back there and act like I don't know. Good, you can, I said, because you're my daughter, and you're stronger than you think. She took a deep breath, let it out slowly. Okay, she said. I'll try. As she stood to leave, I reached across the table and touched her hand. One more thing, I said. I love you, and I'm going to protect you and that baby no matter what it takes. She nodded, squeezed my hand once, then let go. I watched her walk to the door. Watched her get into the car Trevor had loaned her, an old Honda with a dented bumper. Watched her sit there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, head bowed. Then she started the engine and drove away. I stayed in that booth for another 10 minutes, drinking cold coffee, thinking about what I'd just asked my daughter to do. For the next 7 days, my daughter played the most dangerous role of her life. She went back to that motel room, back to Trevor, back to Donald and Kathleen, and she pretended she didn't know about the 67-page plan, pretended she still believed Trevor loved her, pretended she was still the naive pregnant woman they thought they controlled. Every night at 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a single word. Safe. Day 17, Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Safe. Recorded 10 minutes. Trevor talking about Phase 4. Sending file now. I downloaded the audio and put on my headphones. Trevor's voice filled my ears, muffled, but clear. Water ran in the background. He was in the motel bathroom thinking Melissa couldn't hear him. Once the kids born were gone. 2 weeks max. Donald's voice answered. What about Melissa? She'll go crying back to Daddy. He'll take her in. Grandparent guilt works every time. And the money, $200K left from the insurance payout. We split it 50 for you, 50 for Mom, 100 for me. New names, new state, and custody. That's Mom's play. 6 months later, she resurfaces. Concerned grandmother. Files for custody. We bleed the old man dry. The recording ended. I sat motionless, listening to my son-in-law calmly plan my daughter's abandonment. Somewhere in that motel room, Melissa had stood close enough to capture every word. She was braver than I ever realized. Day 18, Thursday night. Safe. Trevor told me to call Dad and beg for money. I said no. He's angry. 30 minutes later, another file arrived. Trevor was yelling this time. Melissa crying real tears. Your father has millions and you won't even ask. He hates us. He won't help. Then we take what's ours. Trevor, please. I'm done waiting. He thinks he can destroy our lives. He's going to pay. A door slammed. Silence. I called Andrea. He's escalating, I said. That's good, she replied calmly. Desperate men make mistakes. Keep her recording. Day 19, Friday. No text. By 11 p.m., I was pacing my study. By 11:30, I had my coat on. At 11:47, my phone buzzed. Sorry. He took my phone all day. I'm okay. Big news. They're planning something. What kind of something? A break-in. Your house. Soon. Day 20. Saturday morning. Melissa sent a photo of Trevor's notebook. Handwritten scribbles, Bennett house back window, no alarm. I forwarded it to Victor. They're planning burglary, I said when he called. Probably after the Corvettes. Then we catch them, Victor replied. Set up cameras. Let them walk into it. Not yet, I said. We need them to attempt it fully. No entrapment claims. So we wait. We wait, I agreed. Day 21. Sunday night. Safe. Overheard Donald. We hit the house next week. He keeps Corvette keys in the study. I looked at the pegboard in my office. 4 sets of keys. 4 classic Corvettes worth $750,000. Trevor had watched me hang those keys through his hidden camera. Memorized every detail. Now he was coming for them. Day 22, Monday afternoon. Andrea and Victor met me at my house. Blinds drawn. Voices low. This is already enough for charges, Andrea said, reviewing the audio. Conspiracy to commit burglary and fraud. But if we move now, I said, they'll claim Melissa collaborated. Andrea nodded. We need them caught in the act. So we make it easy, I said. Victor leaned back. You're baiting them. I'm removing obstacles, I corrected. Day 23, Tuesday night. Safe. Trevor asked if I know Dad's schedule. I said he goes to Dr. Warren every Thursday night. Trevor smiled. I read that twice. Perfect. Thursday, 7 to 10 p.m. We'll be ready. Are you sure? One more day, Melissa. Okay. I trust you, Dad. I stared at those words. The first time she'd said that in 3 years. Day 24, Wednesday night. Trevor just told Donald Thursday night. Old man's out. We grab keys, take 2 cars, disappear. Dad, I'm scared. You've been brave. Tomorrow it ends. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will. I'll be there. Police will be there. You'll be safe. Okay. I love you, Dad. I closed my eyes. I love you too. More than you know. That night I didn't sleep. Victor and Andrea came over one last time. We reviewed everything. Cameras placed in the hallway study garage. Silent alarms wired to the back window. Police positioned 2 blocks away. Officer Laura Daniels coordinating with 2 backup units. At 7 p.m. Thursday, I would leave the house as usual. Drive past the highway toward Dr. Warren's clinic. Instead, I'd circle back and park at Mrs. Anderson's place out of sight. The back window would be unlocked. At 7:30, Trevor and Donald would arrive. They'd climb inside, walk to my study, reach for those keys, and then we'd close the net. Day 25, Thursday. The trap was set, but I wasn't going to the doctor. I would be in my basement with Victor watching 4 camera feeds on a laptop. Andrea would coordinate with police. Officer Daniels would wait for confirmation before moving in. Melissa would stay at the motel phone, hidden, waiting for my call. Tomorrow night, Trevor Dalton's plan would collapse. And for the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was in control. My daughter had risked everything to expose them. Now it was my turn to finish it. By this time tomorrow, Trevor would either be in handcuffs or running. Either way, it would be over. And my daughter would finally be free. Thursday morning, day 25, Victor arrived at 10 a.m. carrying a duffel bag filled with surveillance equipment. He placed it on my kitchen table and unzipped it with deliberate care. Inside were 4 miniature cameras, 2 audio recorders, motion sensors, and a laptop preloaded with monitoring software. This time he said, meeting my eyes, we're the ones watching. We started in the living room. Victor climbed a stepladder and mounted the first camera near the ceiling corner, angled toward the front door. It was no bigger than a coin, nearly invisible. Camera 1, he said as he stepped down. Anyone enters through that door will see it. The second camera went into the hallway outside my bedroom. The third in my study, positioned above the bookshelf with a direct view of my desk and the wall safe behind it. The fourth camera went into the garage, aimed precisely at the pegboard where I kept the car keys. By 11, everything was wired and synced. Victor opened his laptop and showed me 4 live feeds in split-screen view. Every entrance covered, every angle secured. Test it, he said. I walked into the study and opened the safe. The combination was one I'd used for 40 years, April 17th, 56, Evelyn's birthday. Inside were property deeds, investment statements, my life insurance policy. On the lower shelf sat 4 labeled key rings, 67, Stingray, 70, Chevelle, 73, Camaro, 78, pace car. $750,000 worth of vintage steel resting in my garage. I removed the keys and placed them on my desk. Visible, tempting, impossible to ignore. Victor watched the monitor and smiled faintly. Perfect. They won't resist. At noon, Andrea arrived with paperwork tucked under her arm. She sat at my kitchen table and slid a document toward me. Arrest warrant, she said. Signed this morning by Judge Sterling. The moment Trevor or Donald attempts theft, Officer Daniels can arrest. What about Melissa? I asked. She's not named, Andrea replied. As far as the court is concerned, she's uninvolved. Good. That was the point. At 2 p.m., I made the call from my regular phone, the one Trevor would recognize if he ever reviewed records. I put it on speaker. "Hi, this is Philip Bennett. I'll be at Dr. Warren's office from 7 to 10 p.m. tonight for my annual checkup. Please leave a message if needed." I hung up. "He'll check," Victor said. "He's been waiting for this," I replied. At 2:30, I sent Melissa a message on the burner phone. Left voicemail on main phone. "Trevor will hear it. Are you ready?" Her response came almost instantly. "Yes." He just listened. He's smiling. Donald said, "Tonight's the night." "They're taking it," Victor said. At 3, Victor ran a final systems test. He walked room to room while Andrea monitored from her laptop. Everything streamed flawlessly. She'd monitor from her car parked 3 blocks away. At 4, Officer Laura Daniels arrived in civilian clothes. She parked discreetly and entered through the backyard. "I'll have 2 unmarked units staged around the corner," she said. "Once you give the signal, we move in. 30 seconds. "What's the signal?" Victor asked. I held up my phone. "I text Andrea 1 word now. She alerts you." Daniels nodded. Clean and fast. At 4:30, Andrea closed her laptop. "Philip, you don't have to stay here. You could leave and let us handle it." "No," I said. "This is my house. It's risky. I'm staying." She studied me, then relented. "Basement only. You don't come up." "Understood." At 5, we reviewed the plan again. 7 p.m. I leave visibly in my Cadillac. 7:15, I return on foot through the woods and enter the basement. 7:30, Trevor and Donald arrive. Back window unlocked. They enter. Cameras record. They reach for the keys. Signal sent. Arrest. "What if Melissa shows up?" Victor asked. "She won't. She's their alibi." At 6, Melissa sent one final message. "He told me to stay at the motel. Watch TV. Don't answer the door. He kissed my forehead before leaving. Dad. Be careful." I replied, "This ends tonight." At 6:45, I turned off every light except one, the desk lamp in my study. It glowed clearly through the front window. At 7, I backed my Cadillac out of the garage, left the garage door open, and drove down the street as if headed to my appointment. 2 blocks away, I pulled into Mrs. Anderson's driveway. She'd agreed to let me park there. I cut the engine and walked back through the wooded path behind my property. The January air was sharp and cold. By 7:15, I was in my basement. Victor waited beside a workbench, laptop open, 4 feeds glowing. Living room empty. Hallway empty. Study lamp on keys on desk. Garage 4, Corvettes gleaming under overhead lights. "Now we wait," Victor said quietly. I pulled up a chair beside him. Somewhere nearby, Trevor and Donald were preparing. Probably confident. Probably certain I was just an old man who'd made things easy. They believed tonight would be simple. They had no idea how carefully we'd prepared. All that remained was patience. Here's the question I want you to answer before we continue. Do you think Trevor deserves a second chance? Or does he deserve exactly what's coming? Drop mercy or justice in the comments. I want to see where you stand. Also, important note. What follows includes some dramatized elements for educational and entertainment purposes. If you prefer purely factual content, feel free to stop here. But if you're invested in this family story, buckle up, because the confrontation starts now. At 9:15, headlights swept across the front of my house. I watched the feed from the basement, Victor beside me, both of us silent. The grainy night vision image showed a dented Toyota Camry rolling to a stop in my driveway, the same car Melissa had been driving for the past 2 weeks. Trevor stepped out first, glancing over his shoulder. Donald emerged from the passenger side, adjusting a dark baseball cap. Victor typed a message to Andrea, who was parked 2 blocks away with Officer Daniels. "They're here." Trevor approached my front door, tested the knob. Locked. Donald pulled a slim metal tool from his jacket, a lockpick set the kind sold at hardware stores, with a wink and a nudge. It took him 3 minutes. The bolt clicked. They slipped inside. I watched them move through my living room, their steps cautious but practiced. Trevor knew the layout. He'd lived here for 14 months. Donald scanned the walls, probably checking for motion sensors. They found none. Victor had disabled the alarm an hour ago, leaving only the cameras. They headed straight for my study. On the monitor, I saw Trevor stop at the threshold, his silhouette framed by the single desk lamp I'd left burning. He whispered something to Donald, who nodded and followed him in. Trevor crossed to the wall, safe, hidden behind a framed photograph of Evelyn. He lifted the frame, set it on the desk, and spun the combination dial. 041756, Evelyn's birthday. The code I'd used for everything: bank accounts, email, garage locks, for 43 years. Trevor had watched me enter it a dozen times on the hidden camera. The safe door swung open. Inside were 4 sets of car keys, each tagged with a year and model: 67 Stingray, 70 Chevelle, 73 Camaro, 78 pace car. $750,000 of vintage steel sitting in my garage. Trevor reached for the keys. I stood, climbed the basement stairs, and walked into the study. I wouldn't touch those if I were you. Trevor's head snapped toward me. Donald spun his hand, diving into his jacket. I raised both palms. Relax, Donald. There are 4 cameras in this room alone. Whatever you pull out, you'll regret it. Trevor's face twisted. You were supposed to be at the doctor's. I was. Turns out I didn't need an appointment. I stepped closer, keeping the desk between us. I needed you to come here. To prove what I already knew. You don't know anything, old man. I know you installed a keylogger on my computer. I know you opened offshore accounts in the Caymans and the Bahamas. I know you filed a fraudulent insurance claim for $480,000, listing my cars as stolen property. I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my pocket, a printout of the file Trevor had titled Bennett Asset Acquisition.docx. I know you planned this from the beginning. Phase 1, infiltrate. Phase 2, dependency. Phase 3, pregnancy. Phase 4. I unfolded the page, held it up so he could see his own handwriting. Exit strategy. Abandon Melissa after the baby's born. Take the insurance money. Disappear. Donald moved toward the door. I didn't look at him. Your fake SSNs won't help you, Donald. The FBI already has warrants for Donald Eugene Crawford and Kathleen Marie Crawford. Wire fraud. Identity theft. 6 states. I kept my eyes on Trevor. You picked the wrong family. Trevor lunged. He crossed the desk in one motion, grabbed the front of my shirt, shoved me against the bookshelf. Books tumbled. My shoulder hit the edge of a shelf, sharp, bruising pain. Donald stepped forward, lifting a brass bookend from the desk. Then I heard her voice. Trevor, stop. Melissa stood in the doorway, her hand pressed to her belly, her face pale. She was breathing hard, her other hand clutching the burner phone I'd given her. Trevor froze. His grip on my shirt loosened. Melissa, what are you? I called them, she said. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. The police are outside. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Trevor released me, stumbled back. Donald dropped the bookend, bolted for the back door. He didn't make it 10 feet. Officer Laura Daniels and 2 uniformed officers stormed through the front entrance, weapons drawn. Hands up, both of you now. Trevor raised his hands. Donald, cornered in the hallway, did the same. Officer Daniels approached Trevor, cuffs ready. Trevor James Dalton, you're under arrest for burglary, attempted assault, violation of a protection order, and conspiracy to commit fraud. She read him his rights, while her partner secured Donald. I moved toward Melissa, who had slumped against the doorframe, her breathing shallow. Are you hurt? I asked. She shook her head, but her hand stayed pressed to her belly. The baby. We need a medic, I shouted. An EMT named Mike Sullivan appeared within seconds, guiding Melissa to the couch. He checked her pulse, listened to the baby's heartbeat with a portable monitor. 140 beats per minute, he said. Strong and steady. You're okay, ma'am, just breathe. Melissa closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I sat beside her, took her hand. She squeezed it hard. By 10 o'clock, the house was empty again. The police had taken Trevor and Donald to the county jail. Andrea had arrived to collect the evidence: Trevor's lockpick, set the brass bookend, the printout, the USB drive, with every file from Trevor's laptop. Officer Daniels promised a full report by morning. Melissa and I sat on the front porch, the night air cool against our faces. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Dad. You have nothing to be sorry for. I should have seen it. You loved him. That's not a crime. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, what happens now? Now, I said, we start over. The stars were bright above us, scattered across the winter sky. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed through the valley. I thought about Evelyn, about the life we'd built in this house, about the mistakes I'd made and the ones I'd narrowly avoided. I thought about my daughter sitting beside me and the grandchild I'd never met but already loved. Tomorrow would bring lawyers' depositions, a trial. Tonight we had this silent stars and the promise that we'd face whatever came next together. The interrogation room at the county police station smelled like stale coffee and desperation. I stood behind the one-way glass with Andrea and Victor, watching Officer Laura Daniels arrange thick folders on a steel table. Trevor Dalton sat across from her, still in the wrinkled shirt from the night before, wrists cuffed to a metal ring bolted to the table. His court-appointed attorney, Rachel Winters, flipped through her legal pad, her face carefully neutral. It was 9 in the morning, 11 hours since Trevor's arrest. I hadn't slept. Neither had Melissa. She was in the waiting area outside, pale but steady, one hand resting on her belly. Officer Daniels opened the first folder. Mr. Dalton, at 9:17 p.m. last night you entered Philip Bennett's residence. How did you gain access? Rachel leaned forward. My client was retrieving property that belonged to him. The property, 4 sets of vintage Corvette keys, belongs to Philip Bennett, registered owner since 1998. Daniels slid over a title document. Here's the title for the 1967 Stingray. Mr. Bennett's name. Trevor's jaw clenched. He gave them to me. A gift. Andrea muttered beside me, he's lying. Daniels remained calm. Do you have documentation of this gift, transfer papers, bill of sale? Trevor said nothing. We have security footage showing you using lock-picking tools to enter at 9:17 p.m. Mr. Bennett was inside the residence. You broke into his home. Trevor leaned back, sweat forming at his temples. He set me up. He knew I'd come. You attempted to steal vehicles valued at $750,000, Daniels said evenly. That's burglary. At 10 o'clock, Victor entered the room with Trevor's laptop sealed in an evidence bag. He placed it on the table. This was seized from Mr. Bennett's home the night of the Christmas assault, Victor said. Daniels logged into the laptop using the forensic password and opened a file titled thou_tom_ty_san_bennett.docx. 67 pages, she said. Let me read from page 12. Phase 3, pregnancy. Objective: create leverage through unborn child. Timeline: conception by December 2024, birth April 2025. Trevor's face drained of color. That's fake. Someone planted it. Victor stepped forward. Metadata shows the file was created April 15, 2023. Last modified December 15, 2024. He produced a printed report. Browsing history from this laptop shows heavy gambling activity, poker, sports betting. You lost $340,000 in 18 months. Rachel raised her hand. My client's finances are relevant? Andrea interrupted as she entered with another folder. In October 2024, Mr. Dalton filed a fraudulent insurance claim for stolen Rolex watches valued at $480,000. The payout was wired to a Cayman Islands account on November 12th. She placed bank statements in front of him. Your offshore account, Trevor's voice faltered. I needed the money. You committed insurance fraud to cover gambling debts, Daniels said. That's wire fraud. At 11:15, the door opened again. A man in a dark suit stepped in. Agent Thomas Riley, FBI. He nodded at Daniels, then faced Trevor. Your parents, Donald and Kathleen Dalton, are actually Donald Eugene Crawford and Kathleen Marie Crawford. Trevor blinked. What? They're wanted in 6 states for elder fraud and identity theft. Riley placed mugshots and warrants on the table. They've stolen over $2.1 million from elderly victims. Trevor's voice cracked. I didn't know. They were arrested at 6 a.m. at the Highway 7 motel, Riley continued. $89,000 in cash. Fake IDs, a list of targets. He tapped the documents. Your father ran the operation. Your mother handled custody claims and elder abuse lawsuits. You were the infiltration specialist. I just needed somewhere to stay, Trevor said weakly. Daniels flipped to another page of the laptop file. Contingency protocol: if discovered, blame Melissa. She has no knowledge of offshore accounts. Trevor slumped. At 12:05, the door opened again. Melissa entered. Trevor's head snapped up. Melissa, baby, tell them. I'm here to give my statement, she said calmly. She handed Daniels the burner phone. I recorded 7 days of conversations. The first audio clip played. Trevor's voice. As soon as the kid's born, we disappear. Trevor stared at her. I loved you. Melissa held his gaze. You called me the useful one in your file. Rachel stood. Officer, I need to confer with my client. The room cleared. Andrea, Victor, and I returned to the observation room. Melissa joined us. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded. I'm done being afraid. At 2:30, the interrogation resumed. Trevor refused to answer further questions. Daniels formally read the charges. Trevor Dalton, first-degree burglary, second-degree assault conspiracy. To commit fraud, insurance fraud, $480,000, identity theft. Donald and Kathleen Crawford, multiple counts of wire fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, and conspiracy. At 3 p.m., Andrea filed a civil lawsuit for emotional distress and defamation stemming from Melissa's viral video. At 3:30, Agent Riley confirmed federal charges would follow. Donald and Kathleen faced 10 to 15 years. At 4 o'clock, Judge Carolyn Sterling appeared via video. After reviewing the evidence, her ruling was immediate. Bail is denied. The defendants are flight risks with documented interstate fraud. When we left the station, Melissa asked quietly, "What happens to Trevor now?" Andrea answered, trial within 60 days. With this evidence, he's looking at 5 to 7 years minimum. Melissa nodded. Good, she said. For the first time in months, her voice held no fear. The first morning after the arrests, I found Melissa asleep on my living room couch. She'd refused to return to the motel, and I hadn't argued. For the first time in weeks, her face looked peaceful. No tension in her brow, no fear in her shoulders. I made coffee quietly so I wouldn't wake her. At 8 on day 27, I drove her to see Dr. Thomas Warren, my longtime physician. He ran blood tests, checked her pressure, and listened carefully as she described the stress and fear of the past weeks. Stress isn't good for the baby, he said gently. You need rest and stability. At 10, we moved to the ultrasound room. Nurse Janet Reynolds dimmed the lights and pressed the transducer against Melissa's belly. The screen flickered to life, grainy black and white. There's the heartbeat, Janet said, pointing to the rapid flutter. Strong and steady. About 19 weeks. Melissa's voice trembled. Can you tell? It's a boy, Janet smiled. A healthy baby boy, Melissa cried softly. A boy. I squeezed her hand. She held on tight. On the drive home, I asked, have you thought about names? I wanted Trevor Jr., she said quietly. But now... She stared out the window. You have time, I said. On day 28, I rented her a small one-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from my house. Clean, bright enough space for a crib. I prepaid 3 months' rent and handed her the keys. "Dad, you don't have to. You're my daughter." We moved her belongings from the motel, 2 suitcases, maternity clothes, a framed photo of Evelyn. That afternoon, I helped assemble a crib I'd bought. It took an hour and several online tutorials, but we finished. Melissa ran her hand along the railing. "It's real now," she whispered. On day 29, she met Angela Foster, a therapist Andrea recommended. I waited outside. When Melissa came out, her eyes were red but steady. "She says I'm a victim," Melissa said. "The isolation, the manipulation, that's abuse." "She's right," I told her. On day 30, Mrs. Betty Anderson knocked on my door with a plate of cookies. "Philip, we owe you an apology," she said. "We believed the video. We were wrong." That evening, several neighbors came by to apologize, people I'd known for years. Walter Freeman shook my hand. "We should have trusted you." I simply thanked them. On day 31, Melissa began a part-time remote marketing job. $18 an hour. Flexible. She needed income and independence. On day 32, I visited her apartment for dinner. She was making spaghetti just like Evelyn used to. "I found Mom's recipe card in your kitchen," she said. We ate at her small table. Halfway through, she set down her fork. "Dad, I'm sorry. For believing him. For the video. For hurting you. Your mother used to say, 'Forgiveness is moving forward together,'" I said. "I forgave you the moment you met me at that coffee shop." She cried this time from relief. On day 33, she told me Trevor's lawyer had asked her to drop the charges. I said no, she told me firmly. On day 34, her obstetrician confirmed the baby was healthy. Strong heartbeat, no complications. On day 35, she texted, "Dad, thank you. I don't know where I'd be without you." I replied, "You're my daughter. I'll always protect you." That night, I sat in Evelyn's old chair, holding the ultrasound photo. A grandson. A second chance. For the first time since Evelyn died 3 years ago, I felt like I could breathe again. 4 months later, on a bright Tuesday morning in April, I stood in a courtroom one last time. It was April 15th, 2025. Trevor Dalton sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his face blank. Judge Carolyn Sterling reviewed the documents, then spoke. "Mr. Dalton, you have been convicted of first-degree burglary assault of a pregnant victim, insurance fraud, totaling $480,000, and conspiracy. The court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, 3 years probation, and restitution of $480,000. Trevor said nothing. His lawyer, Rachel Winters, stood briefly. "We intend to appeal, Your Honor." Judge Sterling nodded. "That is your right. But the evidence is substantial." Prosecutor Catherine Walsh stepped forward. "Your Honor, Donald and Kathleen Crawford were sentenced last week in federal court. Donald received 12 years for elder fraud. Kathleen received 10 years. Both were ordered to pay $2.1 million in restitution." The judge turned to Melissa, who sat behind me, 8.5 months pregnant. "Ms. Bennett, your courage likely saved other families. This court commends you." Melissa nodded, her hand on her belly. Outside, she was quiet. Finally, she said, "It's really over. It's over." 3 days later, on April 18th at 4:17 p.m., Melissa's water broke. I drove her to the hospital, my hands steady, my heart racing. At 7:23 that evening, Nurse Janet Reynolds led me into the delivery room. Melissa lay exhausted, but smiling. In her arms was a tiny baby wrapped in blue. Janet placed him in my arms, 7 pounds, 12 ounces, 20 inches long, with Evelyn's gray-blue eyes. "Twadad," Melissa whispered. "I want to name him Philip Bennett II. My throat tightened. Your mother would have loved that. On April 20th, Melissa and the baby moved into my guest room temporarily. The house filled with diapers, bottles, and soft cries at 3 a.m. It was chaos. It was perfect. On April 25th, I spoke at my support group for survivors of elder fraud. 4 months ago, I thought I'd lost my daughter forever, I said. But I learned you can't protect people by controlling them. You protect them by giving them the truth. My daughter saved herself. I just helped her see clearly. Walter Freeman, a friend from the group, nodded. That's the hardest part, letting them choose. On April 30th, Melissa started online business classes. The baby slept beside her desk. On May 5th, Mrs. Betty Anderson brought a handmade quilt. On the evening of May 10th, I sat on the porch holding Philip II. The sun set over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky gold and red. Melissa brought coffee and sat beside me. Dad, when I'm stable, I want my own place, to be independent. I think that's a great idea. But I want you in his life. Every day. You're the only grandfather he'll know. I wouldn't miss it for anything. The baby cooed softly. I rocked him gently, remembering Evelyn's words. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. Trevor never showed up, not really. But Melissa did. She fought her way back. And now, holding my grandson, I realized this was what I'd been protecting all along. Not the money. Not the house. Not the cars. This moment. This second chance. This family. The sun dipped below the mountains. I looked at the baby, then at my daughter, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt whole again. And to you listening to this family story, remember this. Trust is earned through actions, not words. For 3 years after Evelyn died, I built walls around my life, around my money, my home, my heart. I thought protection meant control. I thought safety meant isolation. I was wrong. When Trevor walked into my daughter's life, I saw the red flags. But I didn't act soon enough because I was afraid of losing Melissa. And that fear, that hesitation, almost cost us everything. Here's what I learned. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. But you can give them the truth, the evidence, and the choice. That's what real love does. God gave me a second chance when Melissa walked into that coffee shop. He didn't bring her back because I deserved it. He brought her back because she deserved to know the truth. And maybe, just maybe, he wanted me to learn that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength. If you're in a situation like mine, don't make my mistakes. Don't wait. Don't assume your silence will protect anyone. Speak up. Gather evidence. Trust the process. And most importantly, trust that the people you love are stronger than you think they are. Melissa saved herself. I just held the door open. This family story taught me that revenge isn't about punishment. It's about justice. Dad, revenge isn't about anger. It's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. And when you fight for your family with truth instead of control, that's when you win. Not in court. Not with money. But in moments like the one on my porch, holding my grandson, watching the sunset, knowing we made it through. My advice: verify everything. Love fiercely. Forgive when it's hard. And never ever let fear stop you from doing what's right. Because at the end of the day, family isn't about blood or money or houses. It's about who shows up, who fights, who stays. That's my family story. That's the kind of dad revenge that matters, the one that rebuilds instead of destroys. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt betrayed, manipulated, or afraid for someone you love, leave a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more true stories about resilience, justice, and second chances, subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything. Thank you for listening to the very end. Thank you for staying with Philip, Melissa, and little Philip II through every twist, every tear, and every triumph. Before you go, a quick reminder, The stories you'll hear next may contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. But if you're ready for the next journey, I'll see you in the next story. Take care and remember, truth always wins.